Sometimes there's a little delay. Okay.
Hello?
Hi. Did someone say hello?
Sorry, this is Nelson Andrews, Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe Emergency Management Director.
Hi, Nelson. Thank you for joining.
Hey.
Are you able to join with video?
Yeah, hold on one second. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Nelson. How you doing?
Good,
It's
how are you?
definitely live on Facebook. I just got an alert on my phone.
Okay, we are live right now. Yes. Hello, everyone. This is a crisis response within the crisis, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. We heard the news yesterday that the Department of the Interior and the Trump administration is looking to basically take away the rights to the land of the Mashpee Wampanoag community. And this is very disheartening, to say the least. We are here standing in solidarity with all tribal populations, all tribal communities, and with the Mashpee Wampanoag in particular, as they struggle through the COVID-19 crisis. This is the last thing we would want to face. This is a time for us to be united. This is a time for us to be in solidarity with everyone, and to not be taken advantage of in this way that our administration is acting. With us, we have leadership from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. We have folks who are from the indigenous community from Congressional District 4. We have organizers, and I'm very grateful for everyone who was able to join. So I am going to pass the mic to Chairman of the Wampanoag, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, Cedric-Cromwell. Cedric, thank you for being here. Can you give us an introduction and what is happening? Tell us what is happening in your own words.
Cedric Cromwell, Chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. In my language, good day, my friends and tribal community. I'm the Mashpee Wampanoag. I'm the Chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. Greetings and blessings, life to all. I'm glad that we can all come together through this technology during this very trying time with the coronavirus pandemic. Unfortunately, this administration is doing very hostile, and I call it assaults and attacks. And it's almost a terroristic attack. Our own country is attacking us. We're the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. We're the tribe that met the first settlers, helped them through the first harsh winters, gave up the first land to form Plymouth Colony, which then turned into the United States of America. Our people have served in every conflict from the Revolutionary War to current conflicts to help save our country. We've been recognized by this current president a year ago of all the contributions that our tribe has given to establish this country, as well as President Obama, recognized us during Native American Heritage Month. Our history is long. We've been on our land for over 12,000 years. And in fact, when you think about the longhouse of who we are, Congress studied who we are to form Congress and how Congress is established today. On Friday, this past Friday, the 27th of March, around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I was on a conference call. Now our tribe is really focused on this pandemic as to support and services. Nelson Andrews is our emergency preparedness director who's been working, and we've been diverting our resources towards keeping safe and getting services and support to our tribal community as the rest of the globe is. And on 4 o'clock, I was asked to join a conference call by Darrell LeCount, who's the director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And he said, you know, we want to speak with you. And I said, oh, I figured it was a call about the pandemic. And I said, well, you know, other tribal leaders are going to be on the phone. He said, no, I want to speak to you directly. And I said, well, what's this about? And he said, it's about your land, your federal litigation. I said, well, I've got to have my attorneys, my vice chair on the phone to stop the press, you know, let me get people on the phone. So we got people on the phone at 4 o'clock, our vice chair, Jesse Wildo Beard, along with, you know, our legal team. And they began to talk about how tough things are, but we've got bad news. And Darrell LeCount from the Bureau of Indian Affairs said he was directed by the Secretary of the Interior, David Bernhardt, to take our land out of trust. And I said, whoa, stop the press. What are you talking about? Take the land out of trust. He said, court mandate. Well, there's no court mandate to take our land out of trust. Congress has the plenary authority. Only Congress can do that. I said to Darrell LeCount, this is a very nefarious activity that has taken place here. What are you doing this for? And he was very cold, very crass. They had the solicitor on the call as well, Eric Shepard. The new BIA Eastern Region acting director, who's only been involved for 30 days, Glenn Melville, they would not communicate with us. Our attorneys were like, what policy, what process, what procedure, what law, what are you using to do this? How are you doing this? I've been instructed by the secretary to take your land out of trust. Obviously, this was a Donald Trump initiative. You know, he's really got a problem with our tribe because he's had this assault against Elizabeth Warren, and anything in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts he despises and hates. And now our tribe is being the human body shield for this man's hate. It's very clear what's going on. And in fact, this has not been done since the self-determination era post-1934 has been put in place by Congress. The legislative record wasn't to nibble around the edges. The Indian Reorganization Act, which was called the New Indian Deal, it was put in place to establish and, you know, put tribes back on track because of all the hostile assaults and terroristic attacks this country had did against our men, women, and children, our resources, to really disrupt all our communities across this nation. And so Congress, Collier had went around and saw the state of Indians and tribes and said, hey, it's a travesty out there what this country has done to the natives. Let's get them reorganized and help them reestablish their governments. Granted, here we are today in 2020, and this country is attacking my tribe. This will be the first tribe within this modern era that they will attempt to take away our homelands. Let's be clear, this is just not an attack on the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, but this is an attack against all of Indian country across America. And this is not just a Native American issue. This is a national issue. This is a call to arms of all the good people across America to say, why would this president order his secretary of the Department of Interior, who is our trustee? And for the people out there watching that don't understand this, Native American Indian tribes had governments well before this country was established. We had nations amongst nations on this land. We were sovereign entities. We had chiefs, we had sub-chiefs, we had our districts. We governed our people. We had all the natural resources. You want to use the word wealthy, we were very wealthy because we protected the earth. We had all the resources and we shared. Our economy was grand, if you want to use that a modern word. The settlers came here because they saw the vast richness of this land and implemented the greed-based economy to begin to do theft and stealing of our lands and our natural resources. This is true American history. Congress eventually realized the negative aspects of what they were doing to the tribes, and also tribes, Native American tribes, are constitutional, Article 6 of the United States Constitution. So we are not foreign entities. We're the original people of this land. We had governance, we had resources, we had lands, and we had governance. Okay, so a lot of people in America do not understand American history. And so we're here to educate. That's the key, to educate. The United States then became the trustee, meaning we were wards. Unfortunately, it sounds crazy that Native American tribes would be wards to the United States of America because they became the conquerors, unfortunately. And so we're seeing that conqueror mindset happened today by this president to assault my tribe and assault all of Indian country. Let's break it down even further. So Native American tribes, are the ones that are federally recognized, have sovereign lands, and they govern over those lands for the joy and purpose of their people to continue who they are in the name of prosperity, as Indian people always have. Okay, it would be very similar to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the state of New York, the state of Montana, who is a sovereign nation governing over their land for the representation of their people to continue the word of prosperity, the life of prosperity, to uplift their people. And it's like you and I coming in and saying, okay, the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, New York, Montana, we are taking your land away. This is now an aha moment. I think people begin to understand. Or the United States government, we come in and saying, we're taking all your land away. So how does a government provide governance at that time for the joy and benefit of their people, for prosperity? You can't, because essentially you've taken away the land base. Land, as we know, Mother Earth provides all to people. It provides food, it provides opportunity. It's the blood and bones in which we stand on as people. So if you take that away from a state, if you take that away from a country, and in fact, all sovereign nations, Indian tribes as sovereign nations, if you take that land away from a sovereign nation, you have pretty much looked to exterminate us. You have pretty much looked to destroy our self-determination. You know, we are not assimilated people. Although we live in this country, in this modern world, we drive cars, we have jobs, we receive paychecks, we buy food, we go to supermarkets. Within this world, we are still sovereign nations. So I hope everyone understands the example of a sovereign nation states, the country and Indian tribes, what land means around self-determination, self-governance. We provide housing. We have 42 units under construction for our people with low-income tax credits that were based on our sovereign land. Much needed housing on Cape Cod. That is a very expensive economy. Now that is threatened to be taken away. We have a language school on our land, which will be negatively impacted. We have social services for our elders, our youth, education, environmental protection, Indian health services. We have all these things on our sovereign lands to benefit our people who have been greatly and disadvantagedly underserved by this country based on the invasion way back when. So when we look at this, this is an unprecedented time in which the Secretary of the Interior has directed his people at the Bureau of Indian Affairs to take away the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe's homelands.
Thank
Just
you,
that, that's it.
Chairman. Thank
You
you,
know?
Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. People really appreciate an explanation of what this means for folks on a day-to-day life basis. And I'm really grateful to everyone who joined here to help people understand what is the condition, what is this this call from the Department of Interior, what is its effect on the everyday life of folks. We have with us also Steven Peters. Steven, you are a tribal member from the Mashpee Wampanoag. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what is your reaction? How do you feel about this, and how can we help?
Yeah, so this really was a shocking piece of news to get late Friday, and you know, as a tribal member, it's really saddening. Unfortunately, I think we've been watching this administration over the past 3 years slowly deteriorate their willingness to really do their part as their trustee responsibilities over Native Americans. And there's been a slow deterioration with services, education. There's been points where they've started to look at taking land out of trust as well. And so, you know, those things have been concerning. And we've been watching that slow deterioration over the past 3 years. And what we saw Friday was really an administration that very thoughtfully looked at a nation that was in crisis mode and saw an opportunity to really step in while everyone was not paying attention and do a final blow to Native Americans. And so it's not just our tribe, unfortunately, that this is impacting, it's all of Indian country, because they're taking another step to pull back on their responsibilities towards Native Americans. And so that was really, really difficult for us to see. And I think it's important for everyone to understand just how crucial land is to Native Americans as well, because it's the key connection with our culture, our heritage, our community. We do, as the chairman said, we run schools on there. There's Indian schools that run, which is important because there's a connection with language that's in those schools as well. And we have our Indian health services. So at this point right now, we have some of the best healthcare for our community that we've ever had. And now we're looking at that being taken away from us. That's really difficult to see. And so it's really unfortunate to, I feel like we've, as a country, have taken a step backwards about 50 years. And the way that we treat each other, specifically how our Native American brothers and sisters are being treated is really, really unfortunate. And, now we've got that point where we have to stand up and say, okay, enough is enough. You cannot continue to treat people like this. So, that's where we're at. But thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you. And Stephen, you mentioned that there is an organized meeting right after this. Do you feel comfortable telling us a little bit more about what is the organizing like?
Yeah, so right now, and the chairman's doing a great job trying to keep everyone moving forward. And there's a lot of people that want to support the Native effort to retain their land and to retain what our sovereign rights are that were afforded to us by this federal government. And so there's a lot of groups, the National Congress of American Indians, USET, as well as many others, are all looking to us and saying, what can we do to help? This is not right. And so we're trying to meet with them and organize with them and find the best way to mobilize. Unfortunately, in the middle of a pandemic, you can imagine just how challenging that is, because, like as the chairman said, there's very important resources that have to be allocated out at this point to meet the immediate needs of the health of the community. And that's why I say, the timing of this can't be lost on anybody, because, the federal government, at a point when they have to be very thoughtful about every way that they spend their time and their resources, took a moment to say, you know what? We're going to take time and energy away from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Secretary of Interior and devote it towards ripping the land away from a Native American. And they're doing it because they saw this as an opportune time to do it, rather than looking at this and saying, what can we do to help Native Americans at this point so that they can confront the COVID-19 crisis? They said, what can we do to further beat them down? And that's just really saddening.
Indeed, what cruelty. Thank you, Stephen. So with us also is Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc, can you tell us a little bit more about your engagement with the community and what you've been seeing on the ground and your reaction to what's happening?
I'm Jean-Luc Pierite. My name is Jean-Luc Pierite. I'm a member of the Biloxi tribe of Louisiana. I'm a guest here in Massachusetts, like many of you. And back home in Louisiana, my family works on our language and culture revitalization effort. And here, while living and working in Boston, I'm president of the board of directors at the North American Indian Center of Boston, which is Massachusetts' oldest urban Indian center, providing cultural and social services for the New England Native American community for 50 years. So from my perspective as a Seneca Biloxi person living in Massachusetts, when I got the news from Chairman's post, I absolutely thought that this was an existential crisis, not only for the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, but for all tribes across the United States. You know, part of this is based upon a 2009 Supreme Court ruling, Carcieri versus Salazar. My own tribe, the Tunica Biloxi, through our former chairman, Earl Barbary Sr., led the initiative at the United Southern and Eastern Tribes, USET, to push for a clean legislative fix to Carcieri versus Salazar. But this impacts any tribe recognized after 1934 to use the feed to trust process in order to rebuild their homelands. And so definitely this is something that resonates not only here in Massachusetts with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, but my own tribe in Louisiana and hundreds of tribes. Right now, we have a bill on the Mashpee Wampanoag Reservation Reaffirmation Act. The call to action is to get the Senate to vote and to pass that bill at veto-proof numbers. But beyond that, we do need a clean fix to Carcieri versus Salazar, because what the Trump administration has done by disestablishing reservation without a court order, it signals danger to hundreds of tribes that we may lose the trust status of our tribal lands. But what we're doing basically at NACOB in particular, we're sort of complementary to tribal governments in providing cultural and social services. Our primary focus is on job placement through our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act program. But we've had programs funded through Department of Justice, through the Violence Against Women Act, which has since lapsed. We definitely need a renewal of that law. But we found in serving Massachusetts upwards of 50,000 American Indians within the state, and nationally, over 70% of us live in urban areas, live off of tribal lands. There is a definite need, and there is absolutely on the state level there is a data equity issue. So we found that with working through our women who are affected by sexual assault and domestic violence. Their numbers are not being reported by the state. And even when we talk about the COVID-19 crisis, people that are going to Indian Health Service facilities and having their numbers are reported, this is only a fraction of the picture. We have people who do not have access to Indian Health Services, people who are going to hospitals off of tribal lands, and we definitely need to know those numbers. But you know, this is all definitely in the midst of a pandemic. This is absolutely the last thing that we need for the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, for all federally recognized tribes, but then also all American Indian families that are living in urban areas. That this is adding to the stress. This is not contributing towards their wellness. Now, instead of like, you know, am I going to keep my family healthy and safe? Now they have to worry about, is my tribe going to keep our land? Is our tribe going to be able to self-govern? Are we going to be able to enforce our own laws on our lands? Are we going to be able to go back home and have health services or have education? Will we have a home to go back to? So this is absolutely something that is a stressor and is not contributing to the overall health of our community members.
Yeah, it's really, you know, as I said, it's really cruel to do this during this time. And you know, I have participated in many causes with the indigenous community, whether when the Amazon forests were on fire and we stood in solidarity with, you know, whether it was about environmental emergency and more. And I know that if it wasn't the COVID-19 crisis right now, a lot of people from across the state would be pouring into the streets, showing up at the State House, lobbying for the, you know, the rights of indigenous peoples. And right now we feel like if we're confined, we're bound from being able to stand with each other in person and being out there in that energy and demanding that indigenous communities keep their land. We've seen over and over how targeting indigenous communities on the basis of taking away their resources like water, or on the basis of running gas pipelines or fracking. It's been the case for a very long time. We fought back and we fought back, and I always on this campaign say that every time a community is being targeted, every time a member of the community is being treated with injustice, that's a time for all of us to stand with them, because that's a threat on all of us. And every time we look at it, we start to find out that there is some kind of corporate greed behind the move, that there is some kind of resource that these folks are going after and dismantling the communities just to get that resource. And I know there's haartman is with us here as well, and haartman, you are an activist in the community. You've been on these front lines for a long time. Tell us how you feel right now that you're bound to your house while this is happening.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me, Ihssane. Yeah, it's a very purposeful thing, obviously, to use this moment, to use this crisis, to try to implement acts and actions that otherwise would be unacceptable. And that's exactly what this is. This is unacceptable. It's interesting as an organizer and activist to be bound in the house and not to be able to have this, urgent response action. But I feel like there might be ways that we can, actually force to slow down and think more strategically about how to go about action, which is, the best that we can get out of this, and why not use that to our advantage. But this is terrible. We look at across the country, and we look at, how the financial system is operating, and how the social structure is operating. People are being given breaks on their mortgages. People are being given rent freezes or eviction freezes in cities. And what we're getting is essentially an eviction notice at a time of crisis to have them strip the very land under our feet that we've been on since time immemorial. As long as people have walked on this ground, we have been those people. And this is such a horrific time to do this, such a purposeful time to do this, to take this action, because it is unacceptable, and people would be out in the streets if not for the fact that we're supposed to stay home to protect our own health. But it's very ironic. I find it to be ironic because we're looking at the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower landing. They were supposed to have a reconstruction of the Mayflower landing in Boston, but it had to be postponed because of this virus. And this virus that's sweeping through Boston is just like looking back 400 years ago when we were dealing with epidemics of proportions that took maybe 90% of our people along the coast. And this is the situation that the Mayflower landed into to begin with. And they used that to take advantage of us then, to gain a foothold in our territory and to impose their will, their laws from England and from Europe on our people, on our land. And this is once again what we're seeing happen 400 years later. It's a repetition of history. They're using an epidemic to force their laws and their will upon our land and upon our people. They're looking back and they're using excuses of arbitrary dates. They want to use this date of 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act. Oh, well, at that point in time, that minute and moment in history, well, what happened then? How did the laws work then? Oh, well, we can find a point right there where the way the laws were written support our position. So we'll go by that. But, how far back do you go? Do you go back to 1834? They had the Non-Intercourse Act, where states weren't supposed to dispossess Indian people of their land. They don't want to go back to that point in that moment in history when they were wrong. They don't want to go back to, 1850 when they asked Mashpee to vote and become a tribe and become citizens. They don't want, and we turned that vote down. We said we didn't want to become citizens of the United States because we knew that we looked after our own interests good enough and we had everything we needed. And yet time and time again, they want to write the laws as they go to suit the needs of what they want. And it's not about going by the law, because if the law doesn't suit the needs of their greed, they simply rewrite the law to suit the needs of what they want right here and now. And this has happened again and again and again. Every time we find success within the framework of the laws that they have written, they change the laws. So this isn't about law and order. This isn't about justice. This isn't about morality. This is, in fact, about all of the injustice, all of the immorality, all of the lack of law and order that we have seen, the lack of respect for law and order. And that's what we find ourselves the victims of, is lawlessness. We find ourselves the victims of immorality. We find ourselves the victims of injustice, of folks who have come to our land, sought out a peace, and then sought to impose their will upon us in our homeland where we've been for 12,000 years. And if they can do this to us here in Mashpee, they can do this to certainly any tribe that has been recognized as owners of their land since 1934. They can do this to any tribe that they want to, if it's been done to before that, because they can simply rewrite the laws. They have to write laws right now to do and achieve what they're trying to achieve. They don't have the laws in place. They have to write the laws as they go to reach their goals, and that's the truth of the matter.
Thank you, Haartman, for sharing that so passionately. I can feel it from here. I can feel it from my home, and we stand with you. We have also on video here, we have Nelson Andrews Jr. is the Emergency Management Director at the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. He will share with us a little bit more, and then we will go to Erica and Nancy, who will talk to us a little bit about their reaction as supporters from the district. So Nelson, let me just unmute. There we go.
Winikisak, my name is Nelson Andrews Jr. I'm the Emergency Management Director for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. I'll just give a quick background of what we're dealing with on the COVID-19 response for our tribal community. We took immediate action, and on March 18th, our chairman, cedriccromwell, declared a state of emergency for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. And what that did was it actually started the process of federal assistance. During this time right now, we're in the process of being one of the first tribes in the United States as a direct recipient of federal funding from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And what that means is we will be able to utilize all of the resources of the federal government at the same time that this whole Department of Interior and Justice is going on as well, right? It's an unprecedented move on the Trump administration at this time, while we were actually involved with the federal government as direct recipients of federal funding. We were the first tribe in the United States to receive this direct federal assistance from FEMA. We actually have a FEMA federal coordinating officer embedded with us at our emergency operations center, currently at our tribal government headquarters. So, I mean, daily for 14 hours a day, we're there every day. Today's one of the first days that I'm not in the office, just working from the computer. But to try to get these services in place for the community. Services such as sanitizing supplies for the community, and public health emergency equipment for our Indian Health Service as well. Things that normally would be available are not. Obviously nobody can get them, and we're having a struggle to even get these through our federal counterparts. But it's just ludicrous to think that at this time, that we're literally the first tribe in the U.S. to go as a direct federal recipient of funds and assistance through the federal government under this national emergency declaration, that they're trying to hit us, while we're down and while we're in the midst of this crisis. It's unfair to all tribes, but think about it as us being, the first tribe, right, to greet the pilgrims. So why wouldn't the federal government want to, maybe start there, right, and sweep across the country with this, with the same approach for all tribes, and as Haartman had mentioned, this is, it's a direct representation of what already had happened 400 years ago. I mean, the timeliness, it's almost like the administration was waiting for this opportune moment in time, like to send this. I mean, talk about kicking you when you're down and trying to, take advantage of a small indigenous peoples like has been done throughout history, at the first pandemic or crisis